Hey, so if you have not done the do now yet, I want you to pause and go do the do now right now. You are going to say what you think is happening in this picture and why. So if you haven't done it yet, pause right now and go do the do now. Okay, so this picture is showing a gladiator fight. The guys on the ground right here are fighting to the death for the entertainment of the people up in the stands. This would be the consul, the leaders of Rome we talked about yesterday. And these guys fighting are called gladiators. They were a type of slave they had in Rome whose only job was to fight other slaves for the entertainment of the Roman citizens. So, gladiators were slaves. In Rome, they had slaves. You could be a slave from anywhere if your area was ruled by Rome, or if you committed a crime, you could become a slave, or if you couldn't pay all the money you owed people, you could also become a slave. Slaves were bought and sold in Rome. Some slaves would be bought by gladiator schools called ludi. At these schools, the new slaves would learn to be gladiators, to be fighters. They would practice all day. They were not given enough food, and they were given just enough medicine to keep them alive so that they could learn to fight. After they learned to fight, they would be put in stadiums and expected to fight to entertain the crowds of Roman citizens. I'm using this picture here because even though most gladiators were men, there were also women who were forced into slavery as gladiators. So the question for us now is, what was life like for a gladiator? In 73 BC, something happened. A man named Spartacus led a rebellion. So that's an uprising where people decide to fight back. So Spartacus led a rebellion of slaves against the Romans. Spartacus was a gladiator, so he knew how to fight. And he looked around and he was like, wait, the Romans are training all of us slaves to fight. How about instead of fighting each other, let's fight them? So Spartacus and his buddies got together and they killed all of their masters and started their own army. Do you think it is right or wrong for slaves to kill their masters? Why? And for the sentence starter, you can either say it is wrong for slaves to kill their masters because, or it is not wrong for slaves to kill their masters because. And remember, the masters beat them, treated them horribly, took them away from their families, and made them fight each other to the death. Now, Spartacus and his gladiators actually did really well in the fighting. They won battle after battle. The Romans expected them to lose because they were like, oh, they're just slaves, whatever. These guys knew how to fight, and they kept winning again and again and again and beating all the armies that Rome sent after them. And eventually, the Roman general, he was a man named Crassus. Remember his name because it will come up again next week. The Roman general fighting Spartacus, Crassus, he got so angry that he ordered a decimation for the Roman soldiers. In a decimation, 10 Roman soldiers are put in a group. Those 10 soldiers draw straws. The one soldier who gets the shortest straw gets beat to death by the other 9 soldiers. This was Rome's way of making sure their soldiers did their job, because their soldiers knew if they did not win, 1 out of 10 of them was going to get beat to death by the other 9. Do you think decimation is a fair punishment for the army when it loses a battle? Why or why not? So, even though he kept winning battles, eventually Spartacus lost. The Romans sent bigger and bigger armies after him, and finally, one of them caught up to him and defeated him and his army. Spartacus, no one really knows what happened to him. He may have died on the battlefield, he may have gotten away. Most people think he died and his body was never identified. But his followers who survived were punished by the Roman government. Any slave who followed Spartacus who was still alive was crucified. This meant that they were nailed to a tree or a wooden cross and left there to die. This was a common punishment in Rome, and Rome crucified so many slaves following Spartacus's rebellion that every road in the Roman Empire within Italy had slaves hung up along it who had followed Spartacus. But even though Spartacus and all his followers were killed, he is still famous today, and as you saw through the whole thing, they still make movies and tell stories about him. So the question is, would you have followed Spartacus? Why or why not? All right, guys, that's it for today. We'll talk to you tomorrow.